All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close-Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we have a really fun episode. This episode was recorded on Monday, September 2nd, and will be coming out on Friday of this week. And we have Philip Rossman-Reich of Orlando Magic Daily. We have just a really good conversation. We deep dive on Jaylen Suggs and what his growth could look like pairing next to Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Obviously we know there are going to be menaces on defense, but like really what are the next steps that he's got to take as a player, right? We get into the second unit a bit and kind of more about how the inner workings of Anthony Black and Cole Anthony are going to fit, and kind of like even Gary Harris and how that working is going to develop, and how that second unit has a lot to prove this year, unlike last year where they were one of the best second team units in the league, and now they've lost two of their key players that made that second unit very successful. So we get into that quite a bit. We also talk about Tristan da Silva and Jett Howard and what they need to do to prove themselves as trustworthy players to be in the rotation, even outside of injuries. And then last but not least, we talk about the Magic offense and shooting and how it can be go from a bottom 10 to about a league average. There's some marginal changes that need to happen, but a couple of those go right and they're going to be a league average team. So we get into a lot of really cool stuff on this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to you all hearing it. Before we get into the conversation, I just want to remind you guys to like and subscribe to this podcast and to all of the episodes and content that we put out with Orlando Magic HQ. We got a really exciting upcoming season planned for you. Brett James, our senior reporter, is going to be going to all the home games again, busting out tons of Magic content on our YouTube channel and on our articles through our website. So make sure you guys pay attention to all that. We are going to have a updated and revamped subscriber program. So those of you that want to, help us out a little bit financially and get some benefits back from that, there's going to be a really cool program for you guys that we're going to be refreshing for you. Those updates will be coming out and announced shortly in the coming weeks, but just giving you a little bit of a heads up there. This show will go back to weekly, and so will Alan Anth. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up this season. We're psyched. And we couldn't do it without the support of our followers and our fans, and also our team behind us. We're part of the Believe Podcast Network. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. They have great football podcasts and content. They have a really strong NBA lineup of podcasts, so you can check them out. And then also we are supported and presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform. It's your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know the stuff? Get in on our 200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at a weekly prize and a share of the 200,000. When the game's over, head over to our online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with over one of 150 slot games. Head over to the website today and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. My personal PSA, make sure you're going to gamble responsibly if you choose to do that. And the last thing I want to mention before we get into the show with Philip is we are looking to expand our partnerships this coming season. So if you are a business owner or someone who works for a business in their marketing team, or if you have any influence on a business and you want to speak to a local Orlando, Central Florida audience, please reach out to us. We have a lot of different options and ways we can work together. We would love to talk to you. So shoot us an email at admin@orlandomagichq.com, or just shoot one of us a DM and we will get back at you. Looking forward to hearing from you. Now, with all that being said, let's have this conversation with Philip. All right, everyone. Like I said, I got Philip Rossman-Reich, Orlando Magic Daily Locked On Magic host. Philip, how you doing today, man? Thank you for joining me.
I am doing good. We are on the countdown to training camp. Almost there. You can see the
Yes.
light at the end of the tunnel.
We are recording this September 2nd at nighttime. And no news has come out on the Magic in weeks other than the schedule. And it's going to be like that for a few more weeks until training camp starts. So, but Philip, I have some fun thoughts that I've been thinking about for this team over the last week or two since my last podcast has come out. Right now, we are doing every other. I do one episode 1 week. Alan Ant of the Orlando Magic HQ, they do another one. That's kind of how we've been handling our off season. And so I have a couple of weeks to kind of think about where I want to bring my next podcast. And this one, some of the conversations I want to have with you are a little bit more specific than how does Caldwell Pope help the team? Well, he's going to help us defensively and he's going to hit shots. We know that. That's been said by all of us 1,000 times. So doesn't mean we can't say it again because I love saying it. It's going to be great.
Kentavious Caldwell Pope is going to help this team with his shooting and his defense, guys.
Yes, he will. But I have some fun. I have some things that I think will be fun to talk about. Questions that I think we need to ask, and then even just some random stats that I think are interesting that we could improve on in certain areas. Philip. Okay, so I did actually just bring KCP up as a funny, but my first question absolutely has to do with him and Suggs, right? So, this was kind of spurred on by the Sam Vincini podcast, Game Theory. They've been doing an awesome series where they talk about all players 25 and under. They drafted them, and then they're doing East Coast and West Coast team breakdowns on how they think those teams can meet and exceed their expectations for the year, right? And they had a really lovely segment on the Orlando Magic, and they also, in both the players under 25 and the segment on Magic performance, they brought up Jaylen Suggs. Obviously, he's a tantalizing player, just made second team all defense. Should have been in the running for most improved with just how his offense developed last year. But there's still a lot of question marks around him as a player. And with the Magic not really addressing the point guard position this offseason, just running it back with believing in Suggs. One of the things they brought up was how KCP potentially could allow Suggs to evolve. So I have two thoughts on this in general. The first thought is, how will KCP's presence next to Suggs allow Suggs to evolve as a player and develop? Because we've talked about how they will wreak havoc defensively together and how they're both, relatively good shooters, but we haven't really talked about, at least I have, the growth that could happen with Jaylen because of that pairing, right? The direct connection right there that will allow him to take the next steps. So I'll start with that question with the piggyback of, I'll just start there and we'll just see how that goes. So with that said, you got Jaylen Suggs starting at point guard next to KCP at shooting guard. Jaylen will obviously likely have the ball in his hands a little bit more than KCP as far as the playmaking goes. But that pairing can be really cool. How with KCP allowing Jaylen, being able to effectively guard some of the players that Jaylen would guard, how do you think that will allow Jaylen to evolve his game? I'm just going to state at that and stop talking for a moment and let you respond.
I think the first place to start is, I think it's a little bit of a simplification to say that Kentavious Caldwell Pope's only role for the Orlando Magic is to be a three-point shooter. Obviously, the spacing, the threat of him as a three-point shooter, I think there's hopes that they can get his volume up a little bit more now that he's, not in an offense that's Nikola Jokic centered, but KCP does a lot more than that. And I think the Magic are going to spend a lot of the year discovering the ways that they can use KCP to spring everyone else open. It's not just that he's going to space the floor and be a threat to make a three-pointer. He's also a really good screener. The Nuggets ran a lot of inverted pick and rolls with KCP screening for Nikola Jokic. I think we can expect that with Paolo Banchero, and I think we can expect that as a way to maybe open up some cutting lanes for Jaylen Suggs or cutting lanes for everyone else on the offense. So, KCP is going to help in that regard. Like you mentioned earlier, having KCP to defend other lead guards and other lead wings and to be able to interchange Jaylen Suggs and KCP and even Franz Wagner, I think, is an excellent defender as well. Being able to interchange those players, give those star players different looks, and sort of preserve Suggs a little bit for the end of games so that he can be at his best and at his peak at the end of games. I think that is another way that KCP is going to help this team too. It's, you kind of spread that burden around. But, I think at the end of the day, the Magic aren't changing a lot because, while Gary Harris, I wouldn't say is a disruptive defender. He's a very good defender. He did, they do a lot of things that overlap and a lot of the same things. So I'm not sure if signing KCP is meant so much to free up Jaylen Suggs to do things. I think it's meant to free up Paolo and Franz to do things more, to use him in actions with them to get matchups that they want and get them going downhill. Whereas, I think Jaylen Suggs is going to be asked to do very, very similar things to what he was doing last year. And while KCP spacing will help with that, I don't think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is necessarily a player that's there to make Jaylen Suggs' life easier in that regard.
Makes sense. I just have the thought where it's like, he is a better defender than Gary Harris, so he will be able to pick up teams' offensive primaries at the wing and the guard spot where Gary could do that to an extent, like fairly well. Gary was a good defender. But most of the time it was Suggs taking that role where they can have either one do that. And if there's just a hair less pressure on him to constantly be in that role, the thought was possibly like, okay, if we're alleviating him a hair there, just a hair, will he be able to think a little bit differently offensively to where maybe he becomes a bit more, just evolving a bit more as a playmaker or evolving a bit more as a scorer? Like, would it just allow him to just think a little bit more freely there? Because, there's always, it's been said 1,000 times in the NBA, guys that focus 100% on offense have a hard time focusing on defense and vice versa. And that's why finding these two-way players are like really important. And so, there's steps that need to be taken for Suggs, particularly if he's going to be the point guard of this team going forward.
Yeah. I mean, in I don't think the Magic signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with the thought of this is going to ease Jaylen Suggs defensively.
And I don't either. I think this is just like an added benefit. If I'm elaborating.
So I mean, it's sort of like the problem the Magic had in the playoffs. If there's one thing the Magic maybe kind of solved for the playoffs, if they face Cleveland again, the Magic, I think, made a very conscious decision to put Jaylen Suggs on Darius Garland, knowing that Donovan Mitchell's going to do what Donovan Mitchell's going to do. Like, Gary Harris is a good defender. Donovan Mitchell did Donovan Mitchell things. When Jaylen Suggs was on Donovan Mitchell, he was better than Gary Harris, but Donovan Mitchell did Donovan Mitchell things.
Totally.
I think the Magic, and by game 6 and game 7, the Magic were like, we got to put Suggs on Mitchell. We got to slow him down a little bit more. But I think the Magic made a very conscious decision of saying, let's lock out Darius Garland. Well, now the Magic don't have to change much of what they do. I mean, if you think about the way this team defends, they switch a lot. They're trying to put a lot of pressure on the ball. So you add a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope who can pressure the ball a little bit more. And now you have Suggs sinking back behind him or trapping or, adding to that pressure that the Magic like to put on the ball. Or they can just switch it and they are very confident with all three of their wing defenders being able to defend any guards, any actions. And so, kind of like how on offense, there aren't really positions. Everyone is kind of expected to do everything. Outside of the backline defender and low man defender, the Magic want all of their guards and all their wings to be able to interchange pretty easily and make it hard to hunt a matchup. Obviously, you're not going to target a Jaylen Suggs matchup. So, in that regard, there's less pressure because now you don't feel as uncomfortable maybe switching Suggs off of a Donovan Mitchell in that action and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's on, and you're fine with that. It makes it harder for the defense to pick where they want to target. So maybe they're attacking those guys less. But I think the idea of what the Magic are doing is we're going to put so much defensive pressure on you. You're just going to be annoyed all 48 minutes, and we'll drag you
Totally.
into the mud if we have to.
I mean, the Magic ended last year at 111 defensive rating, second best in the league. I think after the All-Star break, they were first in the league or something like that. But regardless, they were a top 3 defense the entire season.
Yeah.
That is expected.
They made their
At least,
defense better this
yeah.
offseason.
And that's
Like
the
it's
standard
going
I'm
to be
holding
scary.
them to. They should be a top 3 defense. There's other teams that also got better. So I'm just gonna keep it at top 3, but like that's kind of my expectation for them. Um, and yeah, they absolutely improved it with adding Gary Harris to the second unit and KCP to the starting lineup, and players continuing to grow and evolve with their defense and Suggs and Franz and Paulo, and hopefully a healthy Wendell Carter. Now back to Suggs, because I think there is like a stage 2 to this question, right? So we just kind of talked about the relationship with him and KCP. But like there is an individual question about Suggs too. And he's going into his 4th year. Still relatively young. I think he's like 22. He has room to grow offensively, right? We saw him take that leap with his shooting last year, shooting about 5 attempts per game from 3, hitting 39%, 40% from 3 most of the season in that range. Just continuing to just grow as a shooter. And he's taken a little step every year he's been in the league. And that's something I think we all are looking at to watch him to continue and maintain that, kind of stay in that like 37% and above range. If he comes down a little bit, that's okay, but you just don't really want to see him, like, for me personally, I don't want to see him like kind of drop anywhere past like 37%, like particularly if the volume goes up another shot or two, if he's getting more like 6 or 7 attempts per game. As a playmaker, there's, okay, let's break this down into 2 separate sections. Like there's the playmaker growth, and then there's the scoring and offensive like versatility growth there. Like, and we've kind of talked about some of the offensive aspects where maybe he can become a better cutter with some of the screens that KCP can grow or can do. But how can he evolve and grow in both of those spaces this year? Like, what are some like tangible, like realistic expectations that you think we can expect from him?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the major question. And obviously, like with a young player, you expect them to add something to their game every summer.
Yeah.
Suggs was healthy last year. Like, first and foremost, playing 75 games, you can't discount how critical that was to his development. Like, it felt like every time Suggs made a step forward in his first 2 years, he'd face an injury that would knock him back to square one, and he'd have to start over again. So I think staying healthy is a big part of that, and credit to Arnie Kander and his staff, and to Suggs, of course, for putting in the work.
Totally.
To have his body right. Like, availability is the best ability in a lot of ways. But the thing I want to see from Suggs is, I think the Magic last year, especially knowing that they were going to play him a little bit more, they kind of put guardrails on him. Like, they saw what he did his rookie year, where he was just kind of driving, I don't want to say recklessly, but with reckless abandon sometimes.
Yeah,
like he'd throw,
totally.
just throw his body into a defender and just throw the ball up. It sometimes felt like there was a lot there. He averaged, according to Second Spectrum, I think he averaged like 8 or 9 drives per game, which is when you go from 20 feet to the basket to 10 feet to the basket, in his rookie year. And that was down to like 6 or 7 his second year. Last year was like 4. Like, he's really cut that out of his game. And the Magic, I think, did a really good job very clearly defining his role and his responsibilities so that he could be more successful. So the thing that I'm going to be interested to watch early on in the season, and I'll probably track it even in preseason just to see what he's testing and what he's figuring out, I want to see if he'll take that drive number back up a little bit. I'm not expecting him to be at like 7, 8 again. He's not going to be on the ball enough. That's Paolo and Franz territory. But if he's at like 5 or 6 per game, and that field goal percentage on drives or around the basket is looking pretty good, I want to see him get downhill a little bit more. That was something that a lot of us were really excited about him in the draft process.
Totally.
And it's something that we haven't really seen from him. At least we didn't see from him a ton last year, which is really the only year that kind of counts for us in this regard. I want to see what he how he evolves on that front and what that player looks like. And again, I think because there's still going to be some experimenting going on. Like Paolo is still experimenting with this game. Franz is still figuring out his game. Jaylen Suggs is still figuring out his game. There's going to be some growing pains along the way, I think, this season. I think fans have to recognize that and be okay with that. But I want to see Suggs evolve as a downhill attacker a little bit more. Like he was essentially only shooting threes or in transition. So get him more downhill. That's going to create those playmaking opportunities and that decision tree that's so important for point guards to learn and understand. It's going to take him a while, I think, to figure that out. And so again, I don't think he'll be the like full-time point guard. He'll be point guard in name and position, but he's going to have a lot of that responsibility on his plate to organize a team and try and be a third playmaker for this team after Paolo and Franz.
Yeah, and when you don't bring back someone like Markelle Fultz to kind of like, and even Joe Ingles to kind of like bail out, those were the guys that if like
those are your
things
two
were
best
really
passers on the
struggling,
team.
you could throw them in and kind of help settle things down.
They grease the wheel.
Yeah, we don't have that right now. KCP can handle the ball a little bit. I'd say I give him a little bit more props in that area than Gary Harris. And you're hoping for some growth with some of the guys in the second unit that we'll talk about shortly. But it really is like Suggs, you got to continue to step up in this area of being a primary ball handler, but also like being a scorer too, and being able to bail out Franz and Paulo when they need it, and they're going to need it because like I was having this conversation with my friend Josh over at the Dime podcast. I was on his show just the other day, and we were talking about how a lot of the times when Paulo is playmaking, he's got two or three guys on top of him also. So he has to kick it out and have those second options to be able to then also create and play make for the other people. And there's also plenty of times like in transition, if Suggs is the guy with the ball in his hand, he's got to be able to make the right choices, whether that's, creating for someone else or, scoring for himself. And yeah, it would be good to see him get a little bit more downhill in that area. He is fierce. He is strong. He's got the ability to, but he did kind of pull that back. And hopefully the front office, or not the front office, the coaching staff will just allow him to evolve his game a little bit more.
And I would say this to that point though, like the way the Magic operated this offseason, like Paolo Banchero said it publicly. Like, yeah, your star player said publicly, like, get me a table set. Maybe not like a straight point guard. Like he wants the ball in his hands and he understands the Magic want him with the ball in his hands. But he said, get me a table setter.
And that's got to be where Suggs is at right now.
And
answer that question, Suggs.
Well, so your star player said, do this. And maybe he doesn't have enough pull because, the Magic know they'll get him on the max. And so, they're like, we don't have to quite listen to him and be scared that he's going to do anything silly with us.
There's also years to answer that question.
Yeah. But like the Magic answered that question by saying, no, we believe Jaylen Suggs can do this. We believe we have that table setter on our roster already. And now it's okay, go out and prove it, go out and show us, and then start shaping the roster around that.
How does Suggs have to prove that this year though? Like, what does does that just mean like less turnovers, more creativity with how he is becoming a playmaker? Like what does that really mean?
I would say this for the whole team. It means a better assist to turnover ratio. Like the Magic are a low possession team, so I don't take all of their stats like super seriously, but the Magic over the last 2 years have been one of the lowest pass teams in the league. They passed the fewest times of any team in the league. Last year they were better than the year before, so there's progress on that front. They're starting they move the ball a little bit better. But they were, I think, 28th or 29th in the league in turnover rate. They turned the ball over on 15.1% of their possessions. And they make up a lot of it with their defense because their defense forces a lot of turnovers. But when you look, to me, like, I know everyone's obsessed with the shooting, and then the shooting is a part of this. But if the Magic really want a better offense, cut down on the turnovers.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that's the big concern, not having a quote-unquote point guard now, is, okay, how are you going to kind of manage the team and manage these possessions to make sure you're making the most of these opportunities, making most of every opportunity you have? And I think that is like to me, and we talked a little bit about the bench, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. To me, that is like the big question for the Orlando Magic this year is, do they have enough playmaking? Can they get the ball moving? Can they make that extra pass? Can they play without turning the ball over? Have they matured enough to turn the ball over less, make better decisions? Have they done all these things that will unlock their offense a little bit more and really make their defense super devastating?
I just pulled up his stats, and last year was the lowest assists he's ever had as a player. Yet it was his healthiest year, and
like I said, like it really felt like the Magic put guardrails on Suggs, and they said, like, this is your role, do this. Like,
and also like his rookie year, the ball was in his hands way more than it is now with Paolo, right?
Yeah. There's no consequences for anything Jaylen Suggs did his rookie year.
And there was no Paolo, so there was just more time for him to have the ball, right? He had 4 assists his rookie year, just under 3 assists his sophomore year, and 2.7 assists last year. So be interesting to see if that ticks up a little bit, because if that ticks up, and part of that ticking up is probably just like people making shots that he passes it to. But also, making the right passes too.
To that point, like NBA's tracking stats track potential assists.
Yeah.
And the Magic are at the bottom of the list of even potential assists. So
it's fair.
As a team, like they're an ISO team. Like Paolo is their best player. Sure. Franz is their second best player. Paolo's an ISO player. Franz is a pick and roll guy. When the ball's in their hands, they're looking to score. Like they don't have a pass first guy on the team. They are both good passers, but they are not pass first guys. This is a team that's not going to pass the ball a ton. It's something that they'll have to continually work on and get better at.
Speaking of working on and getting better at that, I think we did a great job of just like diving deeper into Jaylen Suggs for 20 minutes. And I love that because like he is such a core part of this team. He's one of the not untouchables, because no one is really untouchable other than Paolo, but like he's like he's pretty much darn untouchable.
Suggs's development is like the story for the Magic. Like
totally,
they gave the max contract to Franz. I'm expecting Suggs to get a deal starting at like 4-year 120. Like he's gonna get there. I think he's a $30 million player.
Yeah.
That is a big bet, especially on a player that has one healthy season. What Jaylen Suggs can be as your third guy. Like all defensive team, great. If he can get up to like 15, 16 points per game, we're not talking about more than like 3 or 4 more points per game.
Yeah.
If he can get to 15, 16, like you said, 37% 3-point shooting on like maybe 6 attempts or 7 attempts instead of the 5 that he's taking now, that's going to be more than enough to make this team a really dangerous team. If Paolo grows the way that we anticipate, if Franz grows the way we anticipate. It's a lot of young guys that you expect to get better. There's no reason to think they won't, and that's why the Magic are investing.
Yeah, it's exciting because he's so pivotal for how this team was successful last year and is going to be this year. And like all the fans that are worried about him not being signed yet, it's fine. They're going to sort it out. It's really not a big deal.
They didn't get pulled until deadline day. Yeah. So October 21st, it'll get done. Like I have no inside information. I am very confident a deal will be done before
I feel
October.
The same way. And it's I'm just like, got too many people in my ears crying about it. I'm like, guys, it's going to be okay. Chill. It's September. It's August. We're fine.
He's going like, and even if he doesn't sign a deal, he is going to be in a Magic uniform for the next 4 years. They're not letting him go anywhere unless someone gives
likely
him
doesn't want to go anywhere.
Yeah. Unless someone gives him a max, which they're not going to.
Yeah.
He's staying. Like it'll be fine.
All right.
Get that check, Jaylen.
Cole Anthony, Jaylen Suggs, go get that check. We're happy for you. We're glad you're here, obviously, because we spent 25 minutes now talking about you. Let's spend some more time talking about some other guards on the team. All right. The second unit, I want to like settle here for a moment. We've lost some ball handlers and Markelle Fultz and Joe Ingles. And we can kind of see lineups of like Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and even Anthony Black probably being in like a 3-guard lineup. At least that's kind of how I've been playing it out in my head. Like, do you have some? I'll just pause. Do you have something different there? Like, I don't think they brought back Gary Harris and to like
Yeah, no,
not be in the second
I
unit.
think he's going to play until he gets hurt, which he always does.
Yeah,
I think everybody being healthy, the Magic will run a 10-man rotation, but they won't run an all second unit group.
right. There'll be some
I would
staggering.
suspect that like Jonathan Isaac comes in for Franz, or even Tristan da Silva comes in for Franz. But I think the 10-man rotation is probably going to settle in at Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac, and Mo Wagner.
Yeah, that's what I have too.
Tristan da Silva filling in when Isaac has to miss time.
Yep.
Maybe if Gary Harris goes cold or gets hurt, Jet Howard comes in. If AB's struggling, Jet Howard can come in, or da Silva can come in. The Magic have, talent-wise, they have depth. I think it's a little less proven than last year's bench because there's fewer veterans. Like, Gary Harris is there, and should spread the floor out a little bit more for them. But like, you're betting a lot on Anthony Black being able to help out a little bit more than he did last year. Jet Howard and Tristan da Silva are, I think, promising young players,
yes,
but still completely unproven. We don't know what we're actually going to get from them. And obviously they got to earn their playing time too. So I think there are legitimate questions about how the Magic shape this bench group and how they maintain that bench dominance that was such a key part of last season.
And I agree with you all there. We have the same second unit 5. That was kind of what I was going in mentally as well. Cole, Gary, Black, Mo, J.I. And then, those other guys, they'll get their opportunity. Like, no team's healthy the entire time.
Yeah.
And, trade deadline might bring some interesting things around. So with all that being said, how are we feeling specifically about Cole and Black being there'll be some staggering with Franz or Paulo in the second unit, but like being some of the primary ball handlers in that second unit, right? Like, we know Cole has some skills in that area, and we know Black has some skills in that area, but both of them have a lot of question marks in that area too. How are you feeling about that unit as the ball handlers? Kind of for the second unit. Yeah, it's because like, we all liked Black, but what kept him on the floor last year was his defense, not his offense, right? He did shoot like super low volume from 3, but like his playmaking was very suspicious for a little while. Like, they limited him so much.
Do anything last year.
So
like, AB brought the ball up, passed it, and was like,
stood in the corner.
Go stand in the corner.
Yeah,
except for the game in Dallas.
Yeah, and he had some moments. He had a couple of moments here and there. And but you got to break things down very micro to get a full collection of 3-minute clips of his moments like that. But yeah, how are we feeling like playmaking wise? Is that going to be enough for this unit? Like, do you think Black will be able to step up enough to kind of help Cole in that department?
I think it is a real question. Like, honestly, I think this is a question because the Magic's bench last year was awesome. Like, that second unit just destroyed everybody, and Franz helps out a lot with that. And Franz, I think, will still be with that second unit. But I think it is a very fair question to ask if the Magic are going to get the same production from their bench. And if they don't get that production, what does that do to their formula for winning? And what does that do for their formula overall? I was really impressed by a lot of things Anthony Black did during Summer League. I thought he was a lot more patient and controlled the tempo a whole lot better as a point guard. But I think there are still those questions on offense, and there's still those issues that were in his draft profile. They're not surprises. Like, we understood that this was going to be part of the game with him. But I think that there are a lot of questions that I think can only be answered when we get to the court, when we get to training camp. Can he win that spot in training camp? I think there will be legitimate kind of battles for playing time and legitimate battles for spots on that opening night rotation. And Jamal Mosley is going to have to make some decisions. And I don't know if we'll kind of see those decisions play out in preseason games. I would caution everyone that probably training camp and what they're seeing in practices is probably more valuable to them than what we see in the preseason games. But a lot of stuff's going to have to be earned and then proven and reproven through the course of the season. As much as I think as much as I think we want to be in a mode of like, this is a team that's ready to contend and a team that's ready to win at a higher level, this is also still a ridiculously young team. This is still a really, really young team that I think is ready to, hold themselves to that standard, hold themselves to that higher expectation. But there's going to be growing pains along the way, and there's going to be some frustrating moments through the course of the season. And I've kind of been telling people this, like, I think the Magic are a better team today than they were on May 5th when the series ended with Cleveland. I'm not sure they're going to have a better record. I'm not sure they're going to finish with, I know the Magic are saying we want to have home court advantage. I'm not sure they're going to get the 5 seed again.
A lot of teams got better this offseason.
It's going to be very narrow. I mean, and the Magic did too. The Magic are in the race. I'm not saying they're about to fall off the face of the earth, but we're talking very, very fine margins where I anticipate the 2 through the 7 seeds going to be determined by 3 games. Like, it's going to be really, really tight margins that determine, where the Magic ultimately finish and how we ultimately view this season. It's going to be another growth. It's going to be, this isn't a cop out by any means. It's going to be another season of growth and development, another season where we see how far these guys are coming and how quickly they're coming before this team decides, okay, this is what we need in the trade market. This is what we have to get to our next level. This is what Paolo needs. This is what Franz needs. There's still, I think, a lot to figure out before we have a lot of those final answers. And the bench is one of them. The bench is there are a lot of question marks.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us realized that Joe was such a connector for that second unit, right? He didn't play a ton of big minutes, but he was playing like 14, 15, 16 minutes a game with that second unit, and he really calmed them down and did a lot of the ball handling to help settle things. Guys like him and Mo Wagner had a great connection and chemistry together. And so now it's like, Black, you got to step up. So, as a scorer, I have a couple things I'd like to see. I just like to see him be a little bit more aggressive, look to take shots a little bit more. He took 1 3-point attempt per game last year on 39-40%. Let's get that up to 3. But I'd like to see him move a little bit more off ball and just be a little bit more aggressive and driving and cutting to the basket when he can.
The AB thing, though, is very similar to the Jaylen Suggs thing. The role they asked him to play did not require him to do any of those things. He had a 12% usage rate.
Right.
And usage rate just means the percent of possessions that the ball ends with you. Shot, free throw, turnover. The ball just he was just not involved. It's just, and even if you look at touches.
That's going to change this year.
It's going to change this year. Absolutely.
That's going to change. That's where
they're going to give him the stage and say, go.
Because even if you take usage rate out of it, obviously that is a part of it, but there was also a confidence thing there. You saw him catch a ball in his hands and sometimes not do anything with it and pass it to someone else.
And to that point,
there's a confidence growth there.
And to that point, I think a lot of fans wanted to see AB in the playoffs. And I kept going back to this point. He got an opportunity in that February stretch against the Knicks and the Pacers, back-to-back games, huge games. Suggs was out. They needed AB. And AB looked scared. Yeah. I don't want to say scared, but AB looked a little.
He didn't look ready.
He looked like a rookie, and I think the Magic lost trust in him for the rest of the season based off those games. I can't say for certain, but it definitely felt like, okay, he's not ready for this level of basketball. Let's ease back on that. He's got to be ready now. He is the answer. He is the guy that fits their type. And honestly, we were talking about Cole. Cole had a bad shooting year last year. He is out there to score. That is his main role. He's the one Magic draft pick under Jeff Weltman that doesn't fit the type.
Right.
He has to be a threat offensively. And I think the Magic love pairing him with another point guard, another ball handler, so they can play him off the ball a little bit more offensively so he can get higher efficiency shots. But the Magic are going to need a lot more from him too. And so, I think we all believe Cole can step up. I think, he was dealing with an injury. Everyone kind of acknowledged something was going on with Cole that they weren't really talking about. But he's someone that's expected to have a bounce back year this year too, or else the Magic are probably going to need to find their flamethrower off the bench, whether that's chasing after a Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton or whoever else.
What they have in
the Magic are going to get involved on the trade market here pretty soon.
Yeah, totally. I think with Cole, you see we just saw Derek White, like, going into year 5, take an awesome step, and his consistency, and I mean, even more than just his consistency, like, he just took a step.
Yeah.
In my opinion, should have been the most improved player of the year. Compared to Maxey got it last year, kind of lame.
Yeah, I don't know who got it.
I mean, granted, he grew too, but that's not the soul of the award, in my opinion. I think for Cole, it's like, why can't he just find that middle ground instead of being super high, super low? Just be consistent. I will take a couple less 20-point plus per games and just get some consistency with some shooting and be just a solid 15-point per game player. That has less ups and downs. Like, that's kind of like my goal for him this year. But for kind of back to black, like, I want to see him evolve a little bit more as a playmaker. I want to see them give him a little bit more opportunity to run a pick and roll and to kind of set things up and just see what he's got. He was the 6th pick for a reason, more than just his defense. And I just kind of want to see what he's got there. And I think I think he will get opportunity to grow, because there's guys that are going to have the ball in their hands less in that unit than there were last year with Fultz and Joe, who did have the ball in their hands a little bit more. So we'll kind of see what happens with Anthony Black. It's going to be interesting. Now with Jet and Tristan, you did kind of mention that there will be a little bit of a battle, that they potentially, like, they're going to get on the court through injuries, but what do they have to do to beat out a Gary Harris or beat out an Anthony Black to get meaningful playing time without just like injuries being a reason?
Yeah, number one, like, to play on this team, you've got to defend. Like, you've got to be a high level defender. You got to be in the right spots. There cannot be a drop off defense.
Like, that feels like you're pointing that directly at Jett Howard.
I mean, like, it's both. Look, rookies are bad. Like, rookies are always bad. Even like Paolo Banchero, his rookie year, he was bad. As good as he was, he is bad. You're only going to get better. And
I just want to pause there. We've never had a 23-year-old rookie that played 4 years in college that like, I mean, he already looks better than some of our rookies from last year,
But he is going to be a rookie.
Sure.
And rookies make mistakes. And obviously it's about how you recover from those mistakes. If you're playing with Jonathan Isaac, you can make some mistakes and be okay. But like, you got to earn the coach's trust.
Yeah.
And the way you earn trust with Jamal Mosley is you defend. And like, look, Anthony Black played a lot last year because he was such a great defender. And he is a really good defender. If Jett Howard wants to play, if he wants to beat out Gary Harris, he's got to A, shoot better than Gary Harris, and B, he's got to defend at least enough that the shooting covers his defense. And putting that effort defensively. And by all accounts, he has. He's worked really hard on his defense. And he looked a lot better at it in Summer League, but it's obviously different playing in the NBA. To play for this Magic team, you've got to defend. You've got to put in the effort defensively and understand where to be within the scheme. Like, if Jett Howard's the low man, he's got to play that role. The low man is so important in the way that the Magic play defense and cover the paint. That is the ticket for any of these guys to get on the court. If you don't defend, you don't play. It's that simple. Like, Cole Anthony isn't a great defender. He tries really hard. Like, he puts in the effort and is respected for that effort. If he stopped putting in that effort, he'd be sitting on the bench too. But defense is this team's identity. If you want to play, you got to defend.
Yeah, I just don't get that. Like, I mean, I get that with Jet, for sure. But like, De Silva is already kind of known a little bit for like being a good defender. Like, he's just got to go out there and do it. He's just got to do it. And like, and this
is what training camp's for.
Yeah.
Like, this is why you have a training camp. You don't come into training camp with, you might have ideas set and you might be wanting to try out different lineups, but you gotta, you see how guys play and how they play with each other in training camp. And that's when you start setting things a little bit more in stone. And then obviously injuries happen and you have to adjust.
I just think there's like a maturity level where like De Silva's going to know how to like lock in, even if he's making mistakes, like he's going to know how to like put effort in two ways, when
the Magic like told us like De Silva just makes winning plays and he's just in the right spot all the time.
Yeah.
and then you watched him in summer league and you're like, oh, that's what that looks like. He's literally in the right spot every single time, and then makes the right play, whether it's to shoot, whether it's to pass, whether it's to drive, whether it's to kick out, whether it's to hold the ball and move it. Like, that guy has a really high basketball IQ. Like, I don't think he'll spend any time in the G League. I think he's going to be someone that the Magic are very comfortable putting in games when they have to.
The only reason he would spend time in the G League is if this team is just too healthy and he just needs to get on a court and get some reps in because they don't practice enough.
With Jonathan Isaac, like, I think Jonathan Isaac's healthy. I think he's going to play a lot of games, but
totally,
you have to plan on Jonathan Isaac missing 30 games.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's planned that he's going to miss 30 games.
Well, he's got to play at least
60 something. Yeah.
No, I don't think that's next year. I think those kick in the following year. He's got to start playing 52.
This year he's getting the 25. Yeah.
And then it's 52 games he's got to play next year to get fully guaranteed, and then it's 52 each of the following years after that. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, his contract the last 3 years is all partially guaranteed or non-guaranteed, depending on the year prior of him playing 52 games or more. He's got to hit that benchmark. Smart thinking with how they structured that contract with him, by the way. Yeah, it'll be cool. I really like what both of those players could potentially bring to the table back to Tristan da Silva and Jett Howard. Like da Silva was talked about, with the Magic organization and scouts of being one of the highest IQ players on the draft, which I'm like really looking forward to just seeing like a mature, rookie still. He's going to be a rookie, but like a guy who's, got some more experience. He's 23. He's older for Franz Wagner, for crying out loud. Like he's going to be more of the middle of our age group than at the end of our age group.
We'll see if he plays Eurobasket next year.
Yeah. And exactly. So he's going to be an interesting case. I think his maturity and his like floor is going to be pretty cool and like welcome to see for a team that's already got so many raw guys with like Black and Jet that got to continue to, you can throw Paulo's name in there and some of these other guys that got to like continue to like figure things out. So, it'll be interesting. All right. The last thing I want to talk about, skipping a few little things since we've been talking for a little bit, and this is just more of like a nugget, right? So we were talking about with some friends, just like 3-point shooting. And as a lot of people talk about with this Magic roster, and my expectations for this team is to let's be league average next year. And how does that work with us not really adding a volume shooter kind of guy and just adding another player like Caldwell Pope, who shoots a career average like 4.7 a game? And I started breaking into the numbers, right? And so the first thing I did was, how many shot attempts did the Magic starters minus Gary Harris take versus the Denver Nuggets minus Caldwell Pope, just to get some like how much volume? Like there was some talk about maybe he won't have guys like Murray and Jokic taking so many threes, and he'll have more opportunity here. Well, I was like, okay, that's or Michael Porter Jr. and Murray were the two guys. I'm like, okay, that's true, but Murray and Suggs actually took the same amount. Michael Porter Jr. takes 6 a game. It's not super high volume, and then our big men actually take more than Anthony or Aaron Gordon and Jokic. So
it's worth noting. The only team that took fewer threes last year than the Magic were the Nuggets.
Yeah. So like they weren't exactly like a high volume team. So the number was actually the same with the starters minus the shooting guards. It was 16 shot attempts per game, with some rounding in there with my rough. Maybe it's 16.5 versus 16.7. I don't really know, but it's like 16 was the number. So the volume opportunity on the Magic will be the same unless some things organically just shift and they just become a higher volume shooting three within their system. And so then and the Magic averaged 31 3-pointers per game last year, right? The league average was 35. Well, where do you get 4 more shots from, right? Well, that could come in a couple of ways. It could come from Jaylen Suggs taking 1 or 2 more per game, like we've talked about. It could be allowing Anthony Black to expand his role a little bit. But I think where we're going to see it the most is by unfortunately, I'm not trying to pick on Markelle Fultz, guys. Don't
No,
come at me.
but
But
it's
he
true.
didn't shoot the ball, and he is
Yeah.
out of the lineup. And now you've added Gary Harris, who is a career four shot attempts from 3 per game shooter. You're putting him in the Markelle Fultz minutes. Granted, okay, maybe it'll come down to 3-ish attempts per game because he's not going to be playing as many minutes as he was as a starter. But like that alone right there, if we can find 4 more shots, that gets you to league average. That's where the Pacers sat. They were at that 15th spot. And I think the 15th, 14th, and 13th team all took 35 threes per game. So
yeah,
I'm not really like bringing this up to like, I basically what I'm saying, the Magic don't have to do a ton to kind of really significantly improve their shooting, right? I don't think they're going to be a top 10 team in 3-point shooting. Could they be league average? I think is very obtainable.
Now, like, I think to that point, though, like, you can't be low volume and low percentage. Magic were 29th in the league in attempts per game and 22nd in the league in total in percentage. As Jeff Weltman likes to point out, after January 1st last year, the Magic were 15th in the league in 3-point field goal percentage. So I think there is something there where the Magic could be a better 3-point shooting team than their numbers suggest. And they can, if they can get their volume up to 30 to 35 and they shoot 32, 33%, and they shoot 33, 34% instead, that's the difference between a few wins right there. That's a few more points. That gets you out of the bottom 10 in offensive rating. I would point out though, and this is the counter argument that I typically make. After January 1st, the Magic had the same offensive rating that they did for the entire season. In fact, they were 22nd in the league in offensive rating last year for the whole season. 112.1, I think.
It never really changed.
It was exactly. They were 21st after January 1st. So making more threes, taking more threes would help. Making more threes would help. Not sitting here debating that. But that alone is not going to meaningfully change the offense and improve the offense. I would always point out
reducing turnovers. Is a big factor on that.
And look, you reduce turnovers, you're going to get more 3-point attempts. Like that there is a trade-off there. You're going to get more shots. You're going to be able to take more shots if you reduce turnovers. The Magic are still going to get to the line a ton. That's just part of who they are. That's something that's a key to their offense. They have, I agree with you. I think they have the bones to be a better offense. Contavious Caldwell-Pope's going to help by just having another shooter in the lineup.
Yep.
If Suggs can keep his pace, if Franz can jump back up to even like 33%, like I'm not even asking for him to get back to 35.
Yeah.
Just make 1 out of every 3. He'll be better. If I'm not expecting Paolo to shoot like he did during the playoffs, but to see him shoot 40% in a 7-game playoff series, if he's starting to hit some pull-ups maybe and can get consistently to 34, 35%, I think it was 32 last year.
Yeah.
Again, this adds 1 or 2 makes in total, but those 1 or 2 makes
is huge.
Changes a lot of games. We're talking like the finest of margins here to get the Magic to be significantly better.
And it's the finest of margins, but I think obtainable. Like
very obtainable.
We're not asking them to go off and like be crazy. Like we're cool. Simple reducing Markelle Fultz and adding Gary Harris helps the shooting. Like that's just simple.
Or even adding Jett Howard or Tristan De Silva in some of those minutes.
Either of those guys. Those are all positive shooters in theory. Like Franz not being a wash from 3. Like you don't got to be league average, but can you get to 33, 34%? Same with Paolo. Like that would be pretty awesome for both of those players. Can we get a tiny bit more consistency from 3 with Cole Anthony, who's supposed to be a fairly, reliable shooter? Like those little things happen and we're not going to they will be a league average shooting team and also help their offense in general, which will be nice.
A top 5 Magic defensive team and a league average Magic offensive team is really getting home court advantage in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah,
that is a ridiculously good team.
Totally. Philip, I loved this conversation. It was fun to kind of get a little bit more granular on some topics and it just felt like a fun conversation for me. You know, we got to like dive a little bit
pop the
deeper on
balloon a little bit.
Yeah,
like let's like say like, hey guys, like there are real questions. This isn't inevitable. Well,
totally.
This team's good, but like there's work to do here.
There's still work to do. This team is young. You know, we'll talk more about some other stuff at some point. I had a few more that I wanted to chat, but we've already been talking for 50 minutes. So I appreciate you, fans of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you are following Philip with Orlando Magic Daily. I know you all know his work, so continue to support it and check out his Patreon that he does. It's really good. I say it's like the best one out there, and that's including the one that I like, our subscription program. So you will get value out of it. So check out Philip's work. And we appreciate you all for tuning in. Philip, go ahead and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, best place to find my work is always at orlandomagicdaily.com. You can check out my podcast, Locked On Magic. We're still in off-season mode, so we're 3 times a week, but we'll be back 5 times a week here very, very soon. I'm going to start my player outlooks in a minute. I'll also be doing those over on my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. That's patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And thank you, as always, Stephen, for the support. I really do appreciate it.
Always. You're one of the OGs. You and I have been talking basketball together for like 7-8 years now.
It's been a while.
But I still read your work and get value out of it. So it's hard for me not to want to continue to support a friend. Anyways, Magic fans, thanks for tuning in. Phillips, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time for another episode of The Close Up, a part of the Orlando Magic HQ Network. Let's go Magic. Peace.